morning that changed everything started like any other. Coffee, the sound of sprinklers, and the faint buzz of my old lawnmower choking on its last breath. I was trimming the grass when I saw the bright orange paper taped to my door. My stomach dropped. I peeled it off and read every line twice. Unapproved paint color, improper mailbox design, and unauthorized garden decor. My eyes burned with disbelief. "Unauthorized garden decor?" I muttered. "You've got to be kidding me." Just then, Susan, the HOA president, came strolling down the street in her wide-brimmed hat, clipboard in hand like she owned the entire neighborhood. "Morning, Mr. Collins," she said with a smile too sweet to be real. "I see you got the notice. You'll need to repaint the house by next week, or face fines." "Fines? Susan, it's gray. It's literally gray." She glanced at my house with theatrical concern. "It's charcoal slate, not heather mist. Those are two different shades in the HOA-approved palette." I laughed, thinking she was joking. She wasn't. The next few days turned into a nightmare. I got more letters, each one more absurd than the last. A $100 fine for leaving my trash can out 15 minutes late. Another for having an unapproved rosebush. Then came the last straw, an eviction notice claiming I was non-compliant with HOA standards. They wanted me out. That night I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the eviction letter while my wife, Emily, rubbed my shoulders. "You've worked your whole life for this house," she said softly. "You're not letting them take it." "I won't," I said, my voice low but steady. "They picked the wrong guy this time." See, what Susan and her clipboard army didn't know was that I wasn't just a homeowner. I was a real estate investor. Quietly, over the years, I'd bought several rental properties across the city. I knew property law like the back of my hand. And if they wanted to play games, fine. I'd play too, but I'd play smarter. The next morning, I called my lawyer. "I need you to pull the HOA's financials," I said. "Every public record, every debt, every lien." A week later, he called back with a smile in his voice. "You're not going to believe this, Mark. That HOA, it's broke. The land under their clubhouse is about to hit foreclosure." That's when it hit me. An idea so crazy it made me laugh out loud. If they wanted to evict me from this neighborhood, I'd just buy the whole damn thing. When I told Emily my plan, she nearly dropped her coffee. "You're going to buy the neighborhood?" she asked. I smiled. "Not just buy it. I'm going to own them, legally." My lawyer, Derek, got to work fast. The HOA had a mountain of debt from lawsuits and unpaid maintenance. Their precious clubhouse, the same one where they voted to evict me, was about to be repossessed by the bank. All I had to do was wait. 2 weeks later, the property went up for auction. I showed up in a plain gray suit, sunglasses on, while Susan and her board were still scrambling to find funds. When the auctioneer announced the starting bid, I raised my hand. $250,000. Susan spun around, eyes wide. "Mark, what are you doing here?" "Just a little community service," I said with a smile. She glared. "You can't do this! This property belongs to the HOA!" "Not anymore." The hammer fell, sold. I walked out of that courthouse with the deed to the HOA's headquarters in my hand, the same building where they'd signed my eviction notice. But that was just step one. Next, I started buying up shares of the HOA's debt, quietly, through shell companies and proxies. Within a month, I controlled over 80% of their outstanding liabilities. Financially, they were mine. When the next HOA meeting rolled around, I walked into the clubhouse, my clubhouse, and stood in front of the board. "Evening, everyone," I said, setting my briefcase on the table. "As of today, I'm your largest creditor, which means effectively, I am the HOA. Susan's jaw dropped. "You can't do this!" I leaned forward. "I already did." The room went silent. You could hear the ceiling fan hum. Then I pulled out a thick folder. "Here's how this is going to go. All fines against residents are nullified. Landscaping regulations are simplified. And no one gets evicted over the shade of their paint again." One of the board members muttered, "He's serious." I nodded. "Dead serious." Susan stood up, her voice trembling. "You think this makes you some kind of hero?" "No," I said. "It makes me fair. Something this neighborhood forgot how to be." I looked around at the faces of my neighbors, people who'd been bullied, fined and humiliated for years. Some had tears in their eyes. "Starting tomorrow," I said, "this community belongs to its people again. not a handful of power-hungry clipboard warriors. The crowd erupted in applause. For the first time in months, I felt peace. But deep down, I knew Susan wasn't done. The way she glared at me as I walked out, it wasn't over. Emily took my arm. "You won," she whispered. I looked back at the clubhouse, the lights dim behind the glass. "Not yet," I said quietly. "There's always one last move." Peace lasted exactly 9 days. On the 10th, I woke up to flashing lights outside my house. Police cars lined the street. A tow truck was pulling into my driveway. "What the hell is going on?" I shouted, running outside. An officer held up a clipboard. "We have an order to repossess your property, Mr. Collins." I froze. "That's impossible." Then I saw her, standing behind the tow truck, arms crossed, wearing that same wide-brimmed hat. Susan. "Morning, Mark," she said, voice cold as steel. "Seems you didn't pay the new HOA enforcement fee." I clenched my fists. "You mean the fee you made up after I bought you out?" She smiled. "You may have bought the clubhouse and the debt, but you never dissolved the old bylaws. Legally, I'm still president until the new board votes." She thought she'd found a loophole. For the next week, she filed every petty claim imaginable. Noise complaints, zoning violations, even false reports to the city about my rentals. It was war, and she played dirty. Emily begged me to let it go. "You already proved your point. Just move on." But something in me couldn't. This wasn't about pride anymore. It was about principle. That night, I stayed up till dawn with Derek, combing through every page of the HOA charter. Buried deep in the original documents from 1992, we found it, a clause that stated the HOA's governing rights automatically transfer to the majority financial stakeholder if the board defaults on its loans, which meant me. The next morning, I called an emergency meeting. Susan showed up late, confident, smiling. "This is a waste of time," she said, taking her usual seat at the head of the table. I slid a stack of papers across to her. "Not anymore." She glanced down, her smile fading. "What is this?" "Transfer of authority," I said. "As of this morning, by legal statute, the HOA no longer exists. It's been dissolved. The neighborhood's assets, records and land rights now fall under a new community trust, one, owned collectively by the residents." "You can't—" "I just did." Her face went pale. "You'll regret this, Mark." I stood. "Maybe. But I'll never regret giving people their freedom back." Silence filled the room. Then one by one, the residents stood and started clapping. Some were crying. Others hugged each other. Susan stormed out without a word. Weeks later, the neighborhood transformed. Kids played in yards again. People painted their homes whatever color they wanted. The place felt alive. One afternoon, I saw Susan's house with a "for sale" sign out front. She was moving out. I didn't gloat. I just walked up to her. "Good luck, Susan," I said. "No hard feelings." She looked at me for a long moment. Then quietly, "You're a better man than I thought." As her car drove away, Emily slipped her hand into mine. "You really did buy the neighborhood," she said. I smiled. "No, I just gave it back to the people who deserved it." Lesson: power means nothing if it isn't used to lift others. If someone tries to control your peace, don't fight for revenge. Fight for what's right.